So, welcome, Kendra. I am just so thrilled that you're here. And I just want to say that, meeting you for the first time and, having the experience of you in Mexico was truly life giving.
Mm.
I just felt transported. You transport me. It's just the only word I can think of is I
Mm.
just get taken to this place that is soft and luscious and present and loving and juicy. And I feel like some of the medicine that you've given me and that I see you give others is just this wild, radical permission to be exactly who they are and to be
Mm.
seen and loved for that. So I
Mm.
just want to tell you that and welcome you
Oh
and
my
give you a
goodness.
chance
Thank you.
to tell us who you are and who you be and all of that.
Well, thank you. I'm just like savoring that over here. Oh, yeah, I'm Kendra. And I always go in like 20 different directions when asked that question. So here I am. I am a woman and mother and a coach, and I really do appreciate what you just shared because for me, like that is something that I just keep sort of sitting down into, resting into, trusting about myself, and something that I feel like I carried from a young age. And as we do in life, don't recognize that it might be what we have to offer to the world. So, yeah, I am really passionate and excited about how we give and receive love and goodness in ourselves and with others, like just so much more freely than most of us have been set up for in our lives, in our childhoods, and our experiences. It's been a real journey for me. And I love just continuing, we were talking before you hit record, like just continuing to peel back another layer and another layer. um, I don't even recognize myself and how much love I can let in now and give pleasure and all the goodness. And I love doing that with my clients as well, or watching that journey. So, yeah, for me, it's all about that, being able to give and receive the good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and on that thread of because I really think that is it, right? The hunger that we have to be able to give and receive love, the craving we have for that type of intimacy. What do you feel are some of the foundational weight bearing walls that need to be sturdy and built up in order for that to be flowing more fully, be more of a possibility?
Mm, that's a beautiful question. Well, the biggest, like the first and foremost, like the foundation of it all, right, is a relationship with self that isn't going to be like absolutely complete without relationship to others, I'll add. But there's this key, like foundational piece I find of just being able to relate to our bodies and our nervous systems, to kind of know where we're at, from moment to moment, to start to have a little bit of an internal map of like, oh, I tend to head right, like when I face this, right? Or I tend to just freeze and stop, or kind of having that self understanding and ways in. Like I didn't, years ago, I didn't know a lot about the nervous system. I had been a dancer and actor, so I thought I was really in my body. But then I came to find out like I didn't have a lot of sense of sensation, or, there really wasn't a lot of presence as, like say a relationship dynamic was spiraling, of like what was mine and what was theirs and what was happening here. So that for me, the what really began this journey for myself, and thus maybe what I lean on with my clients as well, is like a really deep dive into my own actual body and nervous system. For me, it was through the path of really coming to know my pleasure body more. Um, and then just kind of continuing to follow that thread. But that to me feels like it's hard to do anything else. That's really what we build upon.
Yeah.
And then what's so beautiful is that as we add these other pieces that involve other people, it kind of keeps like regenerating. It goes back down into the foundation and like makes it even stronger and stronger, right? So there's like this, yeah, there's like this loop that starts to happen, I've noticed. Right. So
Yeah.
it's not, again, like you got to get it all figured out before you go be in relationship, because we need to be in relationship, because a lot of the wounding happened in relationship. So we're not going to really fully heal without that. But just an awareness that like we do want to have the self intimacy, at least, you know, an eye on that in the beginning. Um, and then another piece that I just feel like I definitely didn't receive that stands on that foundation is two people bringing that like body based awareness and connection into relationship together. And that feels that has felt very important in my own relationship and when working with couples or even an individual. It's not even that both people have to be that aware of what's happening, honestly. Like I feel like I brought that into my relationship and we were able to start co-regulating better. And, you know, like it wasn't even like my partner wasn't and didn't need to be in like a bunch of workshops or in a class about this or something. I was able to, with my eye on that, you know, start to create something different, which then brought his nervous system down a little and able to start again, like this beautiful regenerative loop between us. So that to me is another piece. It's like, yeah, it's like recognizing that we're not just like two heads, you know, interacting.
Yeah.
That we have like animal bodies and we have a nervous system, and if we can bring awareness there, that goes a long way to opening up, right? Because I think sometimes in matters of like the heart and love, we kind of want to talk through all our stories and our experiences and our pain, and there's beauty in that shared experience, but it falls short of actually creating something different. So in both cases, self intimacy and with a partner, it's like going into the body and the nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And it creates, there's so many things in there you said that like I want to pull out, but like it creates just a richer, fuller, deeper experience of your relationship, of life, right? Like there's this depth that you're able to feel and live from, and then also create a relationship from. You know, and when you were like talking about, you know, these two people coming together, I really had this sense of like that's those sovereign beings, you know, like two people who can really feel their sensations or even just be two bodies, right? Instead of
Mm-hmm.
just the heads, like you were talking about, and what that opens up in relationship, in life, in parenting, in how you move about the world, right? Like everything.
Yes.
And it reminds me too of, you know, something you talk about and I speak about a lot is like the shape that we take
Mm.
and how that's not fixed, how it can be molded and it can change and it can open and you can take new shape. And like the shape that couples take and like that dynamic and how that all
Mm-hmm.
plays out and everything. Yeah, if there's anything in there that kind of, you know, comes up for you around the shape and including our whole body and not just like up here.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I have so much to say about that. Um, hmm. Yeah. I mean, one thing that, and I've spoken about this a good bit, one thing that amazed me in my own relationship is when I started being able to track more, like what are, you know, what is my body doing here posturally, what am I doing behave, you know, like what kind of movements do I start to make in a moment like this, what sensations come on board, to notice that I started to give, you know, these sort of like almost like characters.
Mm.
It just helped me, right? And it's like because they really did. Like and in like theater, you start to build a character, and part of that was how they carried their bodies and the tone of their voice and things. And so I would notice that when my partner, who had a very big, he does still have he has a big presence. He's just a big person, and like he's tall and big, and he's like, he has a lot of presence, and he has a pretty like sympathetic nervous system like tendency, right? Just a big energy. And so very easy for us from the beginning of our relationship, not knowing what we were doing, but he would get bigger and bigger, and I would get smaller and smaller. And so I'm, sort of like, where is she going? And so he's bigger and coming toward me. And this could be in a moment of pure joy. It didn't have to be a struggle, a moment of struggle, but in a moment of struggle, it would really get amplified. Mm-hmm. And so I started to notice that, wow, there's like some very specific things that happen here. I slump my shoulders. I lose a few inches in height, right? My voice goes up and it starts to sound a little girlish. I mean, it's just like, if I had to give it it sounds younger than I am. And also, yeah, often I would start to feel like a fireball here. Like, so it almost felt like there's like all this power, but it's trapped in here, and I gotta shrink around it. And how that would create him kind of needing to move in, get bigger, and just, we have a vicious cycle here. And we have such clear shapes. Like, if we had to kind of dramatize that, such clear shapes in the bodies. And what was possible when I started to both, be with some of the parts that were getting poked at in those moments, and also just in the moment start to play with, what happens if I stand up tall again? Like, how does that feel? Do I have different thoughts start to come through? Can I just take a deeper breath? Maybe he doesn't then need to grow so much and come toward me so much. And it just started to create this like slightly different dance, and then a slightly more different dance. And then one day we weren't experiencing that dynamic anymore. And to me, and that, took time, but to me, the idea that like that kind of thing can feel so fixed in relationship, like so fixed. And you can almost all feel collectively like a victim to it, right? And the fact that through these little adjustments, plus bringing like, I am on my own, here comes that like self-intimacy piece, like on my own, or being held by someone outside of our relationship, holding space for maybe some of the parts that were getting tight in those moments. Doing those two things, we just created a whole different dynamic that just doesn't happen between us anymore. And that to me is amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah, because I mean, what you described is very much a dynamic that I am starting to pull apart, because my partner too gets big and is more sympathetic, and I will just disappear. And I tend to go more into freeze. And so, like, what I love about what you're speaking about is, one, the possibility, which you always speak about possibility. I just love it. And then two, like, that it's not just like, oh, and then I was just able to like switch and everything was different, right? It's like I started to become curious. I started to make these little shifts, not only with tending to and taking care of what needed to be met in those moments, but also in like these little tweaks in my body, in the moment, and bringing in almost like a play, almost like a curiosity, like, well, what happens if I stand taller? What happens now? What happens here? Yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that also that came from that exploration that I'm really grateful for, I've just, throughout this like journey, I've just had access to more and more compassion for my partner specifically, but I think also for men in general. But what I really could start to see is that, not to say that, he was a victim to what I was doing, but to see that like we really had given each other no other option in that dynamic. Almost, it was like I would have never said that to you, years before when I felt like the victim, quite honestly. Like I would have said I was the victim in these moments. And it just felt like, and again, I guess I should just qualify. I use that word very loosely, but just in the sense that I felt victimized because this person's bigger, louder, and I would go into my like cocoon. But I just started to see like, oh, we really do. There is like a dance going on.
Mm-hmm.
And if one person can start to change the dance a little, like, we get some real clarity. Like if the other person still keeps doing the other dance, that's great information, right? Like if he had continued to be something, this other dynamic, then maybe that would have been really important information for us about what this like the future of our relationship. But that didn't happen. We started a different dance together. And somehow that really opened me up to like, oh, in this particular case, in my relationship, I'm not the victim. Like I'm the co-weaver of this dynamic. We're weaving a dynamic together, and either one of us can really like create something different with little by little. And that possibility was really mind-blowing to me in a way, and it all opened up a relationship that otherwise had been headed towards really an end not so long before that. To all this possibility, like that just keeps deepening to this day. So it's I don't know, I just always find it so exciting like that anyone that that's available.
Yeah, and in that I'm hearing like the liberation. The liberation is a two-way street. By you starting to shift, it also like was able for his shape and the path that it was going to go on to start to shift too, right? The dance started to be different.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about that before?
But that kind of brought forward this feeling that like, because then I feel like was where there started to be a safety for him, for his heart to open more, like for there to be a softening, and that for that to be safe enough for him. And that was, took us down a whole different level of connection and depth.
Yeah, I'm curious, like just, for people who are listening, because I feel like this is a dynamic and a thing I hear, quite a bit of, especially from women, like this challenge of like, no, I just need him to stop doing the thing that he's doing so that then this doesn't happen to me. Just like one piece you would give in either of those, right? Either the one that in this scenario is your partner, or the you, right, that's doing this dance. Anything to offer them, or a place to start to get curious, or anything around this particular kind of dynamic. Someone gets big, someone gets small, and then we're just kind of down this dance.
Yeah. I think one of the key pieces, you can sort of mentally say to someone, right? Like there's like so much more possibility here. Like I often say, like, just check in. Are you only seeing your partner as capable of what they're currently doing? Because we all know in ourselves that we've changed things in ourselves, right? But we have to kind of like keep giving our partners that possibility, right? It could show up differently today. That's fully possible. We've all done it. So, so I just think keeping the mind a little open to that possibility, that's not the easiest thing to do. And so I think what's really helpful is to start to build in some very basic, like it can be a practice you do together. It can be something you kind of do on your own in their presence. But like basic body-based connection, basic kind of nervous system regulation type work. Because what needs to happen is that we kind of need to have an experience of our partner a little more settled. Like we just like our system needs to kind of feel a little bit of that safety. Right. For me, I think that was a big part of it, is that because I had been making little tweaks on my own, we were just starting to sort of land a little more together.
Hmm.
Now, yeah, that dynamic would still happen, but I wasn't as kicked off kilter by it, little by little. And so, yeah, I'm trying to think if that's like helpful. But for me, a part of it is that we were occasionally, like, hey, let's go sit and do some eye gazing, or hey, let's just go lay together, but really notice like kind of syncing up our breath and feeling our
Hmm.
lower bellies pressing into each other.
Yeah.
These are things I invited him into, and he was willing. Um, or even just sitting on the couch and, like actually being in physical contact while just like debriefing from our day or something. It's going to be different for different people. I started to explore like what kind of touch
Hmm.
actually seems to soothe his body, because it was different than what soothes mine, and like these are all these little things that start to create like I feel like it's almost like we've got to be able to see our partners through like a different lens. And I think that gives the possibility of that,
Hmm.
like to
Yeah.
experience their body in its most landed state. And yeah, and so it's like, even if you need to go do that in a really structured way, just to start having that experience a little bit.
Hmm.
Right. And it serves everyone to have this experience of like
Yeah.
a regulation presence together.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what started to also create like a sense of like possibility for me, is having these
Yeah.
little moments.
Yeah, exactly. And then also the softening that happens for both of you, the opening that happens for both of you, which then leads back to where we began of like this true connection and ability to give and receive love,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like then we're back to that place instead of like these shapes that are actually in contradiction to what they're trying to get.
Yes, very much so. Yes. Yeah. And I mean, even it's so funny too, because it's like you can take eye gazing. For some people, that's not going to be the thing, because, that kind of eye contact might actually be quite activating. But if it is a possibility for two people, it's never not amazing to me. Like after we sit and just practice just, breathing and gazing into each other's eyes for like 2 minutes, like how much more that we'll just sit there, and then it's like there's this conversation happening, and our bodies are communicating, and
Hmm.
there's like it's like we entered a different hemisphere or something. I don't know, we're just like we're in a different place together, and my body feels it, and suddenly like conversations are available that weren't going to be had or weren't going to go very well.
Hmm.
I feel like I want to move toward him, where maybe before we did that, I was a little too like wired up from my day and really couldn't be bothered to be like intimate, but I actually am like, oh, intimacy feels like the most natural thing in the world now.
Hmm.
Um, so I share that because it really isn't like big things. It's just, in fact, I would say small things done more often is better than like a big moment of something once a week or something. But um, we also do that when we come together, like just that moment of like if you're hugging, really waiting to feel the other person's body, like actually
Hmm.
let go of some of like the day,
Yeah.
right? And like that sense of like the relationship is a place of respite and relief, not the opposite, which had been my experience for most of my life up until this, quite recently. So
Yeah, that leads us kind of to what we were speaking about before we pressed record of like how to this is like always like this is like I feel like the big question that I'm walking with all the time as I enter this new level of my relationship, and it's like how to connect when we're disconnected, how to meet each other when we're so far away, how to be met, right? And this even leads into
mm-hmm.
like the needs too, like how and a lot of what you're speaking about like brings that possibility in of like, oh, we are starting to go in these different directions. How can we connect? How can we come back? How can I meet him? How can I meet myself here? How can, we find each other
Mm-hmm.
again?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I really am I'm a big proponent for like anything you wanted to do, if you wanted to play the piano like really amazingly under high pressure, then you're gonna like go do some more rote practice, in a non-pressure moment throughout your days, until you get to that point where you could just like in front of a large audience, at a beautiful
Mm.
theater, you can sit down and play this like amazing piece of music. And so I feel like to expect ourselves to, in a moment, be able to start like what I described happened after a lot of exploration and like self intimacy, and then also starting to do some of these like co regulation practices together. So we had both had a little practice in like just building that muscle of almost like the body knowing there's a safety here, like
Mm.
not a mental knowing, but like the body having built a little bit more safety, a little bit more like foundation of connection to fall back on. So that's the first thing I would say is like bringing in together, if you're both open to it, like a little bit of a practice. And it can be so, like I gave a few examples, but it can be so simple, but I think doing it intentionally together, I mean, and one that I kind of mentioned, but I mean, one of the things is just like spending a few minutes exploring like what kind of touch really feels soothing to you, right? Because we do tend to touch our partners the way we long to be touched versus like how their system might really receive touch.
Mm-hmm.
So my partner doesn't like really firm touch. I Firm touch really settles me and I love it. So it sounds like the simplest thing, but we were both kind of giving each other touch that we found soothing in moments when one of us was like, and we were kind of like, ugh, why are like your system's kind of like, that's not scratching my itch. And it seems obvious, like, why wouldn't we just say so? But somehow we hadn't. And
Mm-hmm.
it was, there was a moment where one day we just like, let's just explore this. Like, what really feels soothing to you of what I'm about to do? Like this, no, yes. And so just finding that so that in a moment where you just start to feel a little bit of something happening, a little bit of activation or charge between the two of you or distance, like you maybe have a touch to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so interesting is that it's not even just the touch, it's the effort and the intention behind it. Like when my partner does something that I know months or now maybe years ago, I said, this just really helped when I'm feeling like really wiry. To this day, when he approaches me, even though I'm really wiry and I imagine it takes some courage, but he approaches me and touches me in that specific way, not only does my nervous system receive the soothing, but my heart receives the love. If that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Like it even
Yeah.
kind of brings tears a little to me, like
Yeah.
so warm. To this day, that's like the healing piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
That gets to happen between us. Like somewhere, if not many places in my life, I didn't receive that in those moments. And now he's willing to remember, to track it, to be with me, and to try, even if I might seem like I'm a little dangerous to approach.
Mm.
Um, it means so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, but he only knows that because we like actually played with it for a while, in a structured way. And we talked about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
key. It's key, leading into like the needs conversation of like, we had a conversation in Mexico about like, you know, creating a space where they can get it right, where our partner can actually get it right because they do want to, if you're in a loving relationship full of respect and you do want to give each other what the other person needs. And so often it's hard to know what you need, to be able to ask for what you need, to be able to receive what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And what a beautiful gift it is to give your partner, oh, I know exactly what she needs and I
Mm-hmm.
can give it to her fully. Like, as opposed to just like, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? And just trying and just being like, okay, I'm not even not getting it right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and then you see how we do like end up just going in different directions, right? It feels safer because if we've kind of consistently not quite gotten it right
Yeah.
or really been told we're getting it wrong, then it's not very appealing to like lean
Yeah.
into connection in hard moments, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what would you say around needs? Like I have, so many clients and myself as well that have kind of been on this journey of first even discovering what it is that we need and then how do we get that in relationship?
Mm, yeah, that's a big one. Um, well, it is a journey. And I think that so the first thing I would say is having so much grace for ourselves and our partners on the journey. Um, I think, and just what's also coming forward right now is it's almost like, can we separate like, did the kind of itch really get scratched is one thing. And was there an intention of love and care as another thing to be considering and appreciating? Um, just because sometimes it can feel like if it doesn't scratch the itch, it's just kind of like, versus like, God, I really appreciate that they're trying. And that wasn't quite it, right? But I really do like, can I let the love in of them trying? Um, yeah. A big part to me, again, is it goes back to the self intimacy to a certain extent. I definitely couldn't even begin to find like what it really was I needed um, before that piece
Yeah.
in a relationship. One of the things that, and this came forward, my husband and I had a really in depth conversation about this recently. Um, one of the things that I see that we do as women, and I learned it best from watching myself, is that we create a whole kind of like tornado around something we're asking for.
What?
So it's like this, yeah, like the poor person on the other is like receiving and gets caught up in it and is just left spinning. Um, and actually I'm like blanking on the name of the book. Unbound. Um, I'm like that's all that I can seem to pull forward right now. But maybe we can link to it or something. I like Unbound. It's Kasia Urbaniak, but I can't think of it. But I'll remember. But in that book, she said it in a way that I was really able to like, yes, that's exactly what I was doing for so long, and this is what I work with clients on a lot, which is like asking for permission to ask versus just asking for something. And what that looks like for me, and I think for a lot of women, is that like I have something I think I want to ask for, but instead what I'm doing is I'm kind of giving an argument for why I should be able to ask for it, or I'm giving a lot of information to kind of help make it more palatable, or I don't know, harder to say no to. But when I remember reading a sentence where she said that like we're basically asking for the right to ask versus like, of course I can ask for this. Like I'm a human being. I get to have, what I need and want, especially in the realm of love and care. Right. And I think that that also gets in the way of us even like knowing what we need. Like we're so, I don't know. I know why, and I know like how this all happened, but there can be such a, even for ourselves, I think a feeling of like a tornado around the ask or the need. Like, what do I need? What do I want? Like, and what I've found is that you don't even have to know. You just have to guess. You just have to guess, but you have to guess. Like you have to like try something, right? Like I
Yeah.
don't know if my partner comes over and cuddles with me if that's going to feel better, but I won't know until he comes over and cuddles with me if it's going to feel better. I could also maybe need to be completely left alone. And maybe I'll really feel that once he comes over to cuddle me. And I'll be like, you know what? Actually, my body can't receive that yet. That's not working for me in this moment. Would you mind just leaving me alone for a moment? Like we have to kind of be willing to brainstorm.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that what gets in the way of that the most is that like tornado around like just being someone who asks for what they, like you just ask. It
Yeah.
sounds, I don't know if that makes sense, but
It
it's
makes
something
perfect
that has
sense.
been a
It's
big
like,
light bulb for me
yeah,
lately.
being the person that asks for what they need, even if it's not, even if they don't 100% know that that's what they need. Right? Because when you mentioned that storm, like I feel that, I know that, I see that, I do that, and it's just kind of this whirlwind wind around the thing, and then neither one is satisfied,
Yeah.
right? Because you're never actually like getting just right to the heart of it, or just right into the exploration of it, right into like the clarity of it. And the
Mm-hmm.
only way through that is in this kind of more messier, like, this is what I think I need. Let's try this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, right? And just how like freeing that is, right? Because like what I would notice, and this was years ago when we were like new parents together, I would start out and really all I was maybe asking was like a few hours the next afternoon off on my own or something, something simple. And I would start out and that's what I meant to ask for. But like before I know it, I've been talking for 5 minutes about like how, I've been with our son more in the last 5 days than he has. And I'm looking at him and I'm watching his jaw start to tighten. And whereas he was pretty neutral when we began the conversation and probably very willing, like I know very willing to, if I just said like, I'd love to take tomorrow off, like tomorrow afternoon off, right? But I'm watching and I'm feeling it go downhill. I'm feeling like a heavy drop in my body. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Right. And by the time I say the thing, he's in full defensive mode. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty flustered too, because I'm reading his defensive mode as him telling me I don't have the right to ask for this.
Yep.
And that's that piece where it's just like putting the final like notch back in there of like, oh right, see, he doesn't believe I deserve to have this, when of course the poor guy totally, he was like so willing to support me in that, but the way it all got delivered. And so then even if he gives it to me, like he's
Mm-hmm.
willing, and I'm receiving it from a place of feeling kind of dirty about how I went about getting it. And he's
Mm-hmm.
also feeling kind of dirty because he's feeling kind of defensive and like, yeah, I'll give you this thing, but it doesn't feel fun to give it to you now. Like I would have happily given it to you, but now I feel kind of like you attacked me and my fathering or something, right? And so yeah, it just creates a lot. And then it's like this feedback loop of like, see what happens when I ask for what I want or need.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like there's so much there, I guess, is what I'm acknowledging. And so much compassion for all of us in that whirlwind, because I've been there a lot. I still to this day really have to be with myself around certain desires and asks. And I almost have to do the thing where I say the thing and then I'm like, zip the lips, Kendra, like just spit it out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I have to kind of be with all the parts that still want to buffer it with all kinds of justification. And yeah, and it's takes a lot of practice. And yeah, that's, practice and being willing to, if we don't know what we need, to being willing to take a stab at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is so it's courageous, it's something that I definitely didn't see modeled and don't see modeled much,
Mm-hmm.
just like a woman standing nice and clear and just saying what she needs and without offering explanation or apology or reasons why or the
Mm-hmm.
storm around it.
Yes.
And how you're talking about like, that loop of like, oh, and then it just feeds like, yep, see, I knew it. I can't ask for what I need. And then it
Mm-hmm.
feeds him that when you are expressing your needs and the partner is able to give you, that loop is also really regenerative, right? And
Mm-hmm.
beautiful and like nourishing of like, oh, I can give her what she needs and she'll listen to my needs and it can be this loop that's a nice loop.
Yes. Yes. A nice feeling loop, a good feeling loop. Yeah. I mean, that's probably for my husband, like the top two of the changes that like I initiated in myself that made the biggest difference in our relationship, I
Yeah.
would say. And one more thing that comes forward in that is I think to lighten how serious it all feels is to just ask early and often, and for things you don't even need or want. I mean, not want, but don't need. Like, don't, that's the other piece I think is that we wait often because of this feeling of like, do I really get to have this? Do I really deserve this? Um, there's obviously working with that conditioning over here on the side, either with support or in your own, process. But that wants some unpacking, right? And some integration because we're all carrying it, especially as women, that deserving piece or needing to earn, our needs or our wants. But having said that, one of the ways it's like, yes, do the deeper work, the internal work, but then also in the meantime, like sometimes, I'll give clients like an ask, like quota, like you gotta ask for like 20 things before we see each other again. They don't have, they can be like water. If you're both already sitting down at the dinner table, like, oh, could you give me some water? Right. It could be something really major, but maybe don't make it if that's hard. Like make it really
Yeah.
easy and simple. I do this all the time in our house. I ask my son and my husband for things before there's any charge around them. Like just because, oh, that'd kind of be nice, it would kind of be nice if my son would come in and help with dinner. So I'll just be like, hey, would you come in and help with dinner? I don't need him to. I've definitely done that the opposite way where I've gotten resentful and felt overburdened by making a meal by myself yet again. And then I might say to my husband, my son, something really with like a real, like
Yeah.
charge and jab in it. And then again, they might come help, but no one's enjoying it. This is a very different thing. I didn't wait till I felt that way. I was feeling good, but I was like, oh, great moment to ask. So I just
Yeah.
like, it's like a muscle that I feel like you build and like, don't take it so seriously and don't wait for the big stuff. Right. It's like ask. I heard that somewhere once upon a time and I love it. It's like ask early and often. Just get in the habit of being someone who asks, for things
Yeah.
without justification, just simple little things. And it does start to add up, but it starts to accumulate the sense of like, oh yeah, you start to notice, oh, my partner likes, yeah, they like doing that for me. Oh, my son, yeah, he's happy to come in and help. Like it builds a little bit of yeah, it starts to create that figure eight like we were talking about. Gives your
Yeah.
system a little bit of evidence.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important to try those out in those non charged moments, and just to, yeah, that resentment piece. That one gets to me too. When I was listening to you on the other podcast of like, you were talking about the feedback of being hard.
Mm.
And I have felt that. I've seen that. I hear this longing in a lot of my clients that are women of like, I don't want to be so hard. Like, I want to be soft. Like, how did I get so rigid and uptight and resentful and harden my hearts? And, there's like this armoring that can
Mm-hmm.
happen because just like you were expressing, like I really resonated with like I was a little person that felt a lot that didn't have anyone who could handle that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got hard and then spent
Mm-hmm.
a long time remembering and coming back to softness and sensitivity and I still get like that poke of like, see, can't be sensitive. I'm too sensitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just like that journey of softening and I'm just curious for you if there's any piece in there from of your journey because when you said that I was like, but she's so soft and full woman and just like
Mm-hmm.
receptive and juicy. Like she's not hard at all.
Mm. Well, thank you for that feedback. And I have, like you, I have worked in some ways hard to get there. In other ways, I can acknowledge that, like, I probably have always been that way a little out in the world.
Mm.
Um, until I step into either a deeper friendship or intimate relationship, like romantic relationship. So those are the places, because those are the places where the wounding happened for me, like friendship with other women, like, you know, very close friends, and partners. And so, you know, I'm able to feel quite fine in being that way on my own, especially, or in, you know, sort of like in a more general way in the world. And
Mm-hmm.
also with my clients, it's probably why I love the work so much too, is because it's a part of my job and I love it, and I can bring that. But in those most intimate relationships is where it shows up the most.
Yeah.
And so there's that, first of all, just to normalize that. Um, yeah, I mean, the first piece again was like, oh, doing so much work, like meeting my own heart.
Mm.
Um, I started years ago doing a process that we actually did at the retreat, but around just like actively practicing self-compassion and self-forgiveness on like a daily basis when I was really in the muck of separation and hard times. And that was just so permission giving to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I also, when, you know, my husband would leave with my son, I had like 2 days before I needed to be on again as mother and a safe space for my son who was dealing with his parents separating. And so like I would close the doors and basically create like, you know, like an ashram or something. Like I was like, I will not leave this house. I will simply feel. So I
Mm.
mean, I just really gave myself permission and learned, you know, I gave myself so much love and permission to feel all the feelings. Um, the trick for me, because that had always been a little bit easier, I could do much in solitude and could stay open and soft in solitude, but staying open and soft in relationship, that has really been a journey with my current partner and husband, and we also went through that separation together. And that first meeting myself, and then, you know, it's everything we've really talked about. There's like no one piece. It's just been like a little here, a little there, a little here. And I think the greatest gift that I talk about a lot, and we've already mentioned, is that I would never have guessed that my partner years ago, I would never have guessed that he was available for the kind of support, deeply open, like never ending heart, you know,
Mm.
meeting me and being able to hold all of my messy emotions.
Mm.
Like, and he is. Like,
Mm.
he totally is very, very capable, and, you know, is proud to do it when
Mm.
given the chance to do it successfully. Right. And,
Yeah.
but that just took like all those pieces, that starting to, you know, play with connection and co-regulation, and starting to take a more responsibility for the dynamic, my side of the dynamic, once I had that body awareness and nervous system awareness. Um, and just little by little, a real commitment to repair,
Mm.
another piece. And that really just takes, you know, courage, and kind of like when you jump in really cold water, you know, you're just like, I'm just going to do it. Here I go, you know, kind of feeling, because when you're not used to repairing, going towards each other during conflict or hard times, it just really is kind of like jumping into really cold water. Um, Everything in you is going to be like, no, 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 no. And, you know, again, we just opened up just enough space
Mm.
in our own systems that we could just start to take a step forward instead of a step back, or maybe even just stay where we were.
Mm-hmm.
Into, you know, instead of taking a step back. And it just becomes its own, yeah, like we were saying, like its own kind of feedback loop.
Mm.
Because when something starts to feel a little better, you know, you want to feed it a little more and a little more. um so yeah, it's a long answer,
Yeah.
but
Oh
it's
no,
a journey.
I really appreciate that you named like where, because I feel that too. Like on my own and out there in the world and with clients, like I can just be this person so easily. But in those really intimate
Mm-hmm.
relationships, that's when it all gets messy and dark and hard and just, because of all of the wounding, because of
Mm-hmm.
not being met in those places ever before. And then, like you said, like trusting, like the beautiful healing that can happen in relationship of like, what if this person actually could? Like, I could be soft. I could stay open. I
Mm-hmm.
could be messy. I could jump into the water and move towards this person. Like, and I wouldn't die.
Yeah, I know, right? I know, because it feels like that.
It
It
does.
does
It
feel
does.
like
It
that.
feels like
Let's be
life. It does.
honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it feels
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, it does. And I think too, even like this came forward for me for some reason, but it's like even, these tools, and this is where I think for a lot of people sometimes I'm like, because I work around intimacy, relationship, and sexuality, and I know how intimacy and sexuality match, but I think for a lot of people, they might not see the links between like me working with my own sensuality and sexuality and how that would improve the like emotional intimacy in my relationship. But it actually gave me so many tools. Like, what does it take? Like, what does my actual physical body need to soften in a moment? Is it that my breath maybe like wants to change? Is it just focus of like being more aware of where the tension is creeping in? Because again, I think it's so easy to think, okay, communication is over here in this like heady area. Like, how do we fix these communication things? And then like sexuality is over here in the body, but they're not. They're all in there together. And
Yeah.
you know I think just becoming like such a almost like if your body's like an instrument, just like becoming such the like expert and the best like player of my own instrument, like it gives me a lot to play with in these moments, that it's not a heady thing. It just isn't. It's a lot of the action is happening throughout our body, throughout our nervous system. So having that like deep knowing, comfortability, it's like having a really big toolkit, to pull from. And you just start to do it naturally. I don't know. It's funny. It's hard to even talk about sometimes, right? It's like you start to naturally like, oh, when I notice I brace a little against touch, I naturally deepen my breath and kind of sink into my feet, Like I'm just like, oh, is that true? Or is there something else available here? Right?
Yeah.
Is that just kind of habit that I'm like, ugh, yum. And if I can sink into my feet and relax, there's that softening, right? And then there's just a little more possible between like me and my partner in that moment.
Yeah. What becomes available?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah, I
think,
love how I love how like it's the loop, and I love too how you said about the body, right? Like cuz a
mm-hmm.
lot of times it can just be like, "Oh no, we just need to like communicate better. We just need to talk better. We just need to figure this out." And it's like it can be a lot simpler.
Mm-hmm. It really kind of is. Like that's what's yeah. And I know, I mean, it's your work too, it's like the embodiment piece is it's everything. But I think, yeah, we value so much, kind of like the thinking brain in our society, and we really think we can just think and talk our way into most things. But um, that's the funny part. It doesn't like it almost like the words, when I am in sort of an embodied acceptance of something I'm wanting, I can't really get it wrong how I say it. Like sometimes we'll be like, well, like, how should I ask for that? And I'm like, well, we can play with it a little, but what we're going to be playing with is noticing what happens in your body when you say it out loud. Because it doesn't matter the words you use if your body is not on board. They will
Yeah.
come out a little sideways. There'll be energy, there'll be jabs, there'll be something that to the other person's body doesn't feel safe or okay. Right. So like we want to work with like the kind of almost surface level pieces, but it's actually easier and simpler when we get down into the body over time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like one thing I want to start implementing more in my relationship is like, let's stop talking, no more words, let's just physicalize it.
Yeah.
Like, let's just remember that we're animals and let's just like get on the floor and just like crawl around or whatever. Like, touch each
Mm-hmm.
other, just like no words, because words are what is like getting all sorts of funky.
Yes, it's
Especially for
so true.
me, like, oh, having to talk, I'm like, can I just interpretive dance what I'm feeling, please? Because
I love this.
the words are just, I
Yes.
see them being received wrong, and then that makes them crunchier, and then that makes this crunchier, and then it's just like limited, very limited space that we get
Yes.
stuck in. Yeah. So I
I
love that.
love that. And I also love it because I feel like it gives our partners a little like break. I'm all for, first of all, like, yes, to like getting us on our feet and like moving from our bodies. I love doing that with couples and I love doing it with myself. Um, and also, it's like we tend to, I don't know about you, but like I can be very verbose and I can really run circles around someone if I choose, like verbally and in a moment of charge, especially. So much to say. Yeah. And I like for my partner, I think also in like matters of the heart, I feel very, like I can really penetrate and it can feel a little like my partner, I can see him. And I see this in couples too. When I work with them, it's like, you feel that the sort of pulling back. I'm going to walk away slowly now, but like this pull, even if it's very subtle, a little bit of tension in the face or body. It's just like men have not been conditioned to have
Mm-mm.
access to their emotions and their heart space, just like we were not conditioned, most of us, to have access to our pleasure and our sexuality in its fullness. So can we have a little compassion? And I love what you say, because it's like it kind of evens out the game board a little too, because it's like, let's just throw out these areas in which I've been conditioned to be really strong in,
Mm.
right? So both in sexuality and in like communication and emotional intimacy, like can we even the playing field a little for each of us? So I
Yeah.
love that idea.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I could talk to you literally all day, but I'm sure that we do have other lives that we must go live
Yes.
outside of this. So I just wanted to, one, leave space if there's anything else that wants to be spoken or offered. And then I was just going to wrap up with just a couple little short answer questions.
Okay. Mm, um, I think, I can't help but speak to possibility, I guess. I would just like really like for people to hear in relationship, or even if you're not in relationship, but relationships have gone a certain way in the past for you, that there is like such a possibility to create something really different.
Hmm.
And it does just take the patience and the wherewithal to value like all these pieces we've been talking about, right? And just work at them a little by little. Um, yeah, I just see it in my clients, but I definitely see it in my own life. And I don't think we get that message enough, that like you can really change relationships and dynamics in relationships and the way relationships have gone for you and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Possibility. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, so, feeling into, with all that you've done and where you are now, what advice or what would you tell your 12-year-old self?
Mm. Oh, I just saw an image of her. Um, oh gosh. I think, geez, I mean, it's almost like, it's gonna get rough, but, but, stay open. You're actually pretty fucking cool.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. That openness, that sort of core essence, just any bolstering
Hmm.
for that.
Yeah. If you had a magic wand, what would you give women or men or humans, if you want to separate them out
Mm.
with your magic wand.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Whew, yeah. I mean, there is something, it's like almost like what I would love to be able to do. I mean, there's two things I think. For women, it's like just this, it's like I would love to be able to have every woman have this experience at least once of their like pleasure orgasmic potential, because there's something that I've experienced and I have clients write to me about, it's just like there's a level of self-awe, like being all inspired by what just happened in your own body, your own self, that I think once you start experiencing that, the whole game changes a little or a lot. There's just no other way about it. So, like there's just, it's a life-changing experience, right? And so I would love to give every woman that experience so that we kind of like forget the whole like, self-acceptance. What about just being in awe of yourself? And that sacredness of that. And then I would love to be able to wave a wand and just like between a man and a woman, have them sort of for a moment be able to really see and feel like, again, that sort of closure in the heart of many men wanting so deeply to to win with their partners and love them well, but also needing like some real safety created for their heart space.
Yeah.
And then for women, the same as like their partners to really be able to like somehow for a moment like experience what it has been to be a woman in the world around our sexuality and our bodies, just that sort of like that understanding for an instant, little more grace and compassion, going both directions. That would be amazing.
Yes, it would.
Yes. And I don't give short answers apparently.
No, they're perfect. And then, the last one, what's currently lighting you up and where can people get in contact and find more of you and all of that?
Yeah. Oh, it's currently lighting me up. We talked about this a little before you hit record, is this like really getting into like you spoke about it too just a moment ago, but like the physicality for us as human beings in relationship, playing, getting things like literally on their feet, with two bodies, and like the drama and the play and the creativity in like these relationship dynamics. I've been having so much fun in my own life playing with this, and with clients more and more, and just like bringing play into all of this, because it can feel so heavy. And I think especially as women, like we're meant to be so creative. We just are, and we're in like this, like our expression, the drama, all of it. It's like, it gives us like life force. And I really, that's where I'm really excited these days. Yeah. The best place to find me right now is on Instagram, Kendra Cover. Also kendracover.com website. Yeah. And I think that's everything you asked.
Yeah, when you were talking about just that life force, I remembered you said this sentence in Mexico that's really stayed with me of like, women activate men. Like just to like feel that. And I've had tastes of that, in my relationship of just like when women can really inhabit their skin and who they are and the fullness of them, like what that gives men is powerful.
Yes, it is. And one last thing I'll say about that, because and what's been really, I think one of the things I'm really enjoying is seeing in my own relationship, like right in front of my eyes, how my partner lights up when I use play, and I'm very creative and even dramatic, and I get to feel lit up because no matter how it lands, I just had a lot of fun. And I kind of expressed more of me than I've expressed in a while. But then I also get to see how he has like this little twinkle in his eye and he leans in instead of leaning back. It's like, whereas maybe if I just said, oh, I need this thing, or I'm having this feeling, or can feel kind of heavy. And so it's been beautiful to see the activate, like yes, and to like really see it right in front of me. I'm like, oh yeah, it really does. It is life-giving. It activates something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun.
And just one invitation or one doable action or one like offering you would give anyone listening who was like, this was fantastic. I loved this. Where do I start? What do I do? What did she offer?
What
Just
just
one
happened? Yes.
like doable nugget.
Yeah. So wherever you're at in your journey, it's like connecting in with yourself, I would say, first, right? So it's going to kind of depend for people where they're at on that journey. Yeah. I'm like, what do I want to say here? Yeah. I mean, I'm torn between that and just like, how can I play a little more today?
Yeah.
Because that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I know. Like your
Yeah.
body is just like, play. That's what it is.
That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Like
Yeah.
sprinkle some play in wherever, in with the hard, in with the good, in with like the serious play.
Yes.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
love
for
that.
sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kendra. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so honored to know you and to get to talk with you. And yeah, you're just such a special gift. So thank you.
Thank you, my dear. I feel the same. Thank you.
Yeah.